Hey pals, I'm here today to talk about my favourite read of 2021 so far, and the only book that I've given 5 stars to, and that is A Room Called Earth by Madeline Ryan. This is obviously an absolutely beautifully packaged book. This is published in the UK by Scribe in January, but it's an Australian release, so the author is Australian, the book is set in Melbourne, and it's glorious. If it doesn't make it onto the Women's Prize long list, I think it should also be eligible for the Stella Prize, although I'm not sure, then I will be distraught because this is phenomenal. It's going to be super hard to describe because it's not really plot focused, but I felt like I just had to make a space for this book and talk about it in the hopes that more people would pick it up. So this book is written by an author who was diagnosed with autism whilst writing the book. So the main character is on the spectrum, and we follow her through 24 hours as she gets ready to go to a house party where she doesn't really know anyone, and then when she arrives at the house party and what happens from there. This is first person point of view, so we're inside the character's head, and this book is super focused on the experiences that the main character's having and how she feels about them. And sometimes those experiences are to do with herself, her body, when she's getting ready, she goes through all the details of the precise thoughts of why she's using that body scrub, why she's drinking that drink, why she's decided to wear that outfit, and I loved all of it. That sounds really banal, but it really isn't. It really gets you to hone it in on all those passing thoughts you might have, and how a lot of people don't sort of focus in on those thoughts and really think, well, why do I feel that way and why am I doing this? And a massive question at the centre of this book felt to me why would I do that? Why do other people do that? And why do we expect that of others? So this narrator doesn't do things because other people expect them of her. She doesn't do anything to make other people feel comfortable, and in fact, once she's at the house party, she makes really astute observations on the way people act in a group setting. The way there's this pack mentality, the way women use compliments as a way to reward a woman fitting in or standing out, and how a lot of the times those compliments are actually more targeted at the person giving the compliment, so that they can acknowledge that they know something about that clothing brand, or they're aware of that fashion trend, and how that's a cool thing to be, showing yourself as. And oh my god, this book is just so filled with amazing themes. Basically, just truly believe that this woman, this character exists, but also just wanted to be her best friend. She is a vegan, she talks a lot about climate change and talks about animal rights. She talks about her ginger cat Pork Chop, who I loved. He came up a lot. He was a really central character and I adored him. So much respect was given to him. He's a proper moody, judgmental cat, which I adore. She talks a lot about feminism and also a lot about how it is to be a white person living on Indigenous land, and how does she live with that? How does she acknowledge the fact that this space she's carved out for herself, her home where she feels safe, is actually on stolen land, and that every day she is benefiting from the privileges of being an ancestor of people who colonised this country, and whilst colonising this country did horrific things to the Indigenous people. So that this book is so thoughtful. I adored it. I love books that focus on themes, particularly because sometimes you hear people describe a book and they'll be it had all these themes, and you'll think, how could they have fitted that in? And it felt like none of the themes were dropped. And also sometimes I think you can sense that an author has created a character to convey their, to put them on a soapbox and allow the character to say what they wish they could say. No points did this book feel like it was doing either of those things. I just felt like we had this fully realised woman who was nuanced, as all people are, and had lots of different interests and things she thought were important, and things that could just snag in her mind as she was going through her day, and then she could think of them, and it could roll down here and become this bigger thought, and it just felt so natural and authentic, and I adored it. I also realised whilst reading this book how much I enjoy good dialogue. There's lots of pages of dialogue in this book, particularly towards the second half when she's at the party, and I loved the dialogue. I also loved how I felt like a lot of the ways she held herself in conversations are the ways a lot of people would like wish they could hold themselves, but would feel like that's like socially unacceptable. And obviously our character sometimes recognises that she'd made people feel uncomfortable, but doesn't feel able to not be honest. And so there's a point where somebody asks her what she does, and she responds being like, I know you're sort of asking like, in what way do I perform capitalism and give something back to the economy, but actually my hope is that you're more asking like, what do I love and what am I bringing to the world? And so she just talks about like her, well, not just, she talks about like what she cares about, what she's passionate about. And I love that, because I absolutely hate, one of my biggest fucking peeves is when people meet you and they're like, what do you do? And I know it's like an icebreaker, but it's so unbearable, because the majority of people do not love what they do and do not wish to talk about it whilst they're not at work. And so as a way to start a conversation, I just hate it. And I'd much rather somebody was like, what do you love? I think that's much more wonderful. I just love this, okay? And I'm trying to think of, like, put my finger on what sort of reader would enjoy this. And I don't even think that, because it doesn't have a ton of plot, but it doesn't feel slow at any point, because it sort of feels stream of consciousness, and that you don't for a second leave her thought process, you follow her along for those hours. And you know, if you go to a house party and you don't know anyone and you have to like engage with strangers, like stuff would happen and there's enough to comment on there. And I thought all the interactions she had with people were really interesting. So I wouldn't necessarily say this can only be read by people who enjoy slow books. But I think if you enjoy thematic books, particularly if you enjoy the themes I mentioned, and if you enjoy character-focused books, this doesn't even, I mean, it is character development, but it doesn't really feel like that, because you follow it for such a short space of time, and just because she feels so real. If you like books that really focus on the senses, so texture and smell, it gives you loads of beautiful visuals, you'll love this. I just thought it was phenomenal. I hope in some way I've convinced you to pick this up. I would reread it in a heartbeat, like I actually feel like I want to reread it now, because yeah, it doesn't feel like a book where once you've read it, you're like, you know how it ends. It feels like just spending time with this person, and I would love to like have plenty more novels come out where I just get to spend another 24 hours with her, because I just loved sharing time with her. I thought she was absolutely wonderful. So yeah, and if you don't read of her, read it for Pork Chop. He's brilliant. So I love this book. It's definitely going to make it to my favourite books of 2021, and it's definitely going to win the Best Cover Award as well, because it's glorious. Let me know if you've read it. Let me know if you have read any other book that you think sounds like it might have similar vibes, because I would love to read them. And thanks so much for watching. Pick it up. See you next time. Bye.